of fate.
This is the way. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Tells me when you'll feel Memphis.
Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined by my good friend and my co-host, Devin. And today we're going to be talking about Blumhouses' latest horror film, which is titled The Black Phone. Ooh, The Black Phone. Spooky stuff. My phone was black. Now it's like a dark blue, but close enough.
Mine's red.
Yours is red? Oh, you got the iPhone red?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Showing the support out there. I feel it. Represents. But before we begin today's episode, just wanted to let you guys know you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at FilmOptix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Devin, how was your weekend?
It was a pretty solid weekend, just hanging out with Ethan Hawke.
Oh, God. I was like, our Ethan? Like, I mean, you could have. I don't know. Like, hey, I mean, our Ethan's kind of cool, but I think Ethan Hawke's a little bit higher on the totem pole there.
Yeah, just a bit.
So you've been, you said you were playing Fallen Order. Have you dove into that anymore? Or?
Yeah, I'm almost done, I think.
Oh, man. I just finished A Plague Tale Requiem. Not Requiem, I'm sorry. Innocence, the first one. Very good game. Just kind of, trying to figure out what else to play. I actually might dive into some Fallen Order because I've not played it myself, but it's been sitting on my shelf here for a while. So maybe it's about time I finish another backlog game here. But yeah, nothing too crazy this weekend. Watched some Black Phone. Didn't watch too much else. Oh, I started watching Multiverse of Madness on Disney Plus. I got to say, on my OLED TV, it looks fantastic. I absolutely love it. It is, I kind of want to start it over because I got to the halfway point just to experience it all over again. Because man, it looks beautiful. But Devin, are you ready to get into this review? The real reason why we're here.
Pick up the phone.
Beep, beep.
There's no one there.
It is that classic trope where it's like, oh, the phone rang, and then it's like that heavy breathing on the other side. It's just like,
usually phones don't ring when there's wires coming out of it that aren't connected to anything.
Yeah, that is very true. It almost felt like, the kid from Hey Arnold who also who did the heavy breathing behind Helga, and she always punched him in the face. It felt like that. He answered the phone. It's like, hello. And he's like, it's like, dude, what? Yeah. But so apparently this movie is based off of a short story. So we'll be right back before I get ahead of myself. We'll be right back after this introduction to The Black Phone.
I'll be home in the morning.
Where you going?
I'm staying over at Susie's tonight.
What's new? The flyer.
The papers call him the grabber.
I wish you wouldn't call him that.
You don't actually believe that story, do you? Because he can't hear you, and he doesn't really take kids that safe.
Oh! You goof. Well, isn't that just peachy keen?
You need some help?
You see that?
Yeah.
Would you hand me my hat? Yes, sir. I am a part-time magician.
Are those black balloons in there?
Would you like to see a magic trick?
And we are back with our review of The Black Phone. You just heard a little snippet of the trailer, so I hope you guys are excited. This is the third horror movie we covered. Technically the third, because I covered Men solo, because Devin was MIA at the moment. So yeah, I think this is the third horror movie we've covered. No, this is the fourth, because we did X, Scream. I did the solo of Men, and then this is the fourth one that we've covered here on the show.
Yeah.
So the director is Scott Derrickson. Writers include Joe Hill, Scott Derrickson, and C. Robert Cargil, and stars Mason Thames, Madeleine McGraw, and Ethan Hawke himself, just to name a few. And the story is as follows. After being abducted by a child killer and locked in a soundproof basement, a 13-year-old boy starts receiving calls on a disconnected phone from the killer's previous victims, which sounds very interesting. There's been a lot of rave about this on Twitter and just on the internet in general. People seem to be enjoying it on both sides. It is sitting at 84% for critics on the tomato meter, and for audience, it's sitting at a 90%. So I'm actually going to pass it over to Devin so he can give his initial reactions. But before I do, just to let you guys know, if you are new here to the show, we usually get into our initial reactions first, then we head into spoilers. Sometimes we'll mention a few Easter eggs along the way if there's any type of parallels between the film that we're talking about and other movies or TV shows. Then we get into our final thoughts and then our ratings. So, Devin, take it away. What are your initial thoughts about The Black Phone?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier it's based on a kind of short story by Joe Hill, who's actually the son of Stephen King. So we got some good lineage there. And then it's also kind of a reunion here, this movie, between Ethan Hawke and Scott Derrickson. They did Sinister before, another great horror movie that I remember you being a little too afraid to watch back when it came out. I think it's time. I think it's time to come back around on that one. You've matured as a horror watcher. I think it's...
There's like a threshold, though. There's like a line I feel like I cannot cross. So I don't know. Maybe if it's like during the day, like when people are around me, it's like super bright outside. I don't know. I don't know if I can watch it by myself, but...
Sinister's got probably the best jump scare of all time. I'm just going to tell you that now.
Well, now, see, you should not have told me that because you should have kept that quiet.
I didn't say when. I didn't say what. I didn't say who. It's just, you'll see.
That is true. So go ahead, continue.
I was definitely really very much so looking forward to this one just because of the fact that it is a reunion between Scott Derrickson and Ethan Hawke. This is actually the first movie Scott Derrickson's done since he kind of parted ways with Multiverse of Madness midway through. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept. You see the trailer and you see this just insane mask. Like, the mask is so well made. It really is probably the biggest part of the movie, just seeing his face and the different like configurations it has. It's super creepy. And then Ethan Hawke's performance is amazing as always. He just always brings that gravitas to the performance. I do kind of wish there was more of him in the movie. It seems like there's a few scenes that he's in that were also in the trailer, so you don't get too much new footage of him, but he's definitely a creepy guy. Overall, I really liked the movie. There's a couple of parts that didn't really add too much to the story that I felt like didn't need to be there, specifically around the brother and kind of the different houses. But we can talk about that later. Whenever you have kids involved in a horror movie, it kind of elevates everything and makes it like that much more intense and that much more scary, I guess, because they're kids. Like, you don't expect to see kids put in these situations, and that's what makes it even scarier. But it's cool to see a story where kids are helping out kids and getting the job done.
Yeah, definitely a nice little tale of brother sister love support here. As far as my reactions, I feel like mine kind of align with yours. I didn't really know how to feel about this. I mean, I think it's a really good horror movie. Like you said, I loved Ethan Hawke in this movie. The mask that they made for this looks super, super creepy. And I remember watching
that first one, the first one he puts on where there's no mouth. It's just,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's crazy because like I got a little bit of like Joker vibes from him, just a smidge where he's kind of like,
yeah, there's definitely a Joker laugh in there at some point.
And it's so, it is menacing. Ethan Hawke is a phenomenal actor, and it really, like, out of any other actor out there, I mean, there are a select few, but he is part of the select few that really just gives his all in no matter what movie he's in. And it's just, I always love watching his performance. But like you said, he does.
I thought the two main kids were great too, the brother and sister, especially the sister. She was like really impressive.
Yeah, Gwen, who was played by Madeleine McGraw, she was probably my favorite character of the entire movie, if I'm being honest. It gives you,
She's got quite the potty mouth.
dude. It gave me like the Stranger Things vibes. I don't know what it is, but it's always funny when a child just like completely cusses out like a grown adult, and they just don't.
Look at that! She was the voice of young Katie in the Mitchell's vs. the Machines.
She was also in Toy Story 4 as well.
Yeah, she was Bonnie.
Yeah, she was Bonnie. Yeah,
and she was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Wow,
she was. That's where I remember her from, because I think I was like, I've seen her somewhere, for sure.
There's Young Hope.
Yeah, Young Hope. So yeah, I think Madeleine McGraw's performance is probably like the best for me, but I really did enjoy the brother sister, dynamic, between Mason Thames, who plays Finney. For the longest time in this movie, I thought they were saying Vinny. I'm like, oh, his name is Vincent. And I'm like, oh, it's Finn, like Finn, like from Star Wars.
We never really get what his full name is. Is it Finney? Is it
Phineas?
Finnery, Phineas,
Finnery and Ferb,
Finnegan,
Phineas and Gwen. There you go. That could be a spinoff.
Yeah, could be
definitely. But yeah, Mason Thames did a great job as well. Playing the older brother. But we see them kind of going from this, like they're from like this broken home, and their dad, a bit schizophrenic. I feel like definitely more.
Yeah, there's some scary parts even before we get introduced to. I guess we can call him the Grabber, which another small complaint for me. Not a great name. Not a very intimidating name.
What would you call him?
For such a. See, that's a good question. I don't know. It's just
the Snatcher.
I feel like the name doesn't do justice to how creepy he is.
Yeah, I feel like the Grabber was more so of kids just making up like a random name for someone. Oh, like he's a grabber. What's he do? Oh, he grabs children. He kills them. Kind of situation. So I definitely feel like that nickname was coined from the kid side of the story, because I believe this story takes place in 1978. Yeah, 1978.
The same year as Halloween.
Oh yeah, wow! I did not realize that. So it's always great to see like these. It's this urban myth type situation. No one knows what happens to these kids. Overall, I thought it was a good story. I think it is a good horror movie, but I don't think it necessarily wowed me. There are a few like twists and turns, especially with the ending, which we'll get into here with the spoilers here in a second. But it's Madeleine McGraw, Mason Thames. They're kind of just looking out for each other. Madeleine's kind of like this. They kind of allude to her being like a medium almost in a way. She's able to like connect with the spirits of these,
kind of like The Shining.
Yeah. That's okay. Yes, yeah. I get it. Stephen King's written all over. No, yeah, but I did enjoy it. I just don't. I can't say I was like blown away. Like obviously this is not like a slasher type horror movie. It is more of the, it's kind of like with Prisoners, like, like the abduction of like these kids. Like everyone loves like a good type of like Taken type movie. And I think this is like good horror Taken type movie. But it didn't like blow my socks away. But I thought the runtime was justified with it being around an hour and 42 minutes. And yeah, I mean, good performances around everyone. I just wish Ethan Hawke was more in the story, because he is the big bad, but we don't see too much of him. I'm not sure if they were doing like a Darth Vader effect where like in the original trilogy, like Darth Vader is always there, but they seldom, like very rarely use him to kind of, like it's him, he's back. Like, what's he going to do on screen this time? But I think what they did with Ethan Hawke kind of justifies that. I'd say maybe like 50-50, but I just wish we would have saw maybe a little bit more of his backstory. But
yeah, there have been some complaints about just not seeing more of like who he is, but I kind of like how they have it, because it just kind of adds to the creepy factor because it's just a guy. Like it can just be anybody in your neighborhood. That's kind of what makes it so scary. It's just like he's just a normal guy that's walking around and you would never know.
That is a very good point. And I was actually thinking about that last night because I was talking to a few people who went to go see it. And they're like, well, they kind of said they wish they would have gotten more of Ethan Hawke's backstory as the grabber. I wish I would have seen just more of him in the movie, but I don't think we needed.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier. I wish there were more scenes of him just kind of being the grabber.
Right. Like, I don't think we needed necessarily a backstory for him, but I just wish we would have seen more of him on screen. I do agree with you. I don't think, like you said, it could be anybody in your neighborhood. And and unfortunately, when it comes to like these abductions, there isn't necessarily like a rhyme or reason as to why they do it. Some people are just not right in the head, and they do it because they think it's okay. They're living in their own world, and they're not really, they're not aware of how this, is affecting people, and they're a little bit, sick in the head. But so it's like, it could be anyone.
They keep it open-ended as to what his motivations are, because you can kind of put some pieces together. Maybe he had a questionable past with abuse in his childhood, but who knows?
Or, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, so Ethan Hawke's character has a brother in this movie. I think Ethan Hawke is the older brother. But yeah, let's actually get into spoilers because I feel like we're going that way anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get into our spoiler section. So that was your first spoiler warning for The Black Phone. Again, that is your second spoiler warning for The Black Phone. So if you haven't seen it, it is playing in theaters only. Definitely go watch it with some friends. My theater was like semi-packed. I went like mid-afternoon on a Saturday. There was a lady next to me who was like enjoying it just as much as I was, especially during Finney's situation with his friends in this movie and him, always getting like his butt kicked by these bullies and, his little crush and whatnot. Like, it was so funny. And of course, Madeleine McGraw playing as Gwen, her just cussing out all these cops and whatnot. Like, she just did not care. And
You fart knocker.
as soon as she said that, I'm not even lying, I busted out laughing because it
catches you off guard, that's for sure.
It really does. It's like fart knocker, and then what they say in Stranger Things, like mouth breather and all that stuff. Like these old terms for like, bullies and stuff like that aren't really a thing anymore. But it's like when you hear it, it's like, where did that even come from? It's like, what is the origin of this degrading name that you're calling like these cops that are trying to figure out what happened to your brother that has been taken by Ethan Hawke? So, So
my theater experience was definitely interesting. I saw it last night at about 10 p.m.
Why do you do this to yourself?
That's just the time that worked out with me and some of the guys.
Yeah.
But there were multiple children in our theater.
Oh no.
Like one was probably 5 to 10, and then there was another that was a straight up infant. I was like, what are we doing here? First of all, this is not a movie you take your kids to, and just in general.
Let alone an
And then
infant.
you're doing it at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't understand.
It's like, little Jimmy's having a hard time falling asleep. Let's go to the movies.
Yeah, a movie about kids being abducted.
That 5-year-old or 5 to 10-year-old, he's probably scarred for the rest of his life.
Probably.
He's like, my parents took me to go see this Black Phone movie, and this dude in this creepy mask is like snatching up children. And that's probably why he doesn't like horror movies. He's going to grow up to be a movie fan and hate horror movies now because of the Black Phone. But let alone taking your child to, or not even a child, like an infant. Like, I went to go see The Dark Knight. I can't remember if we went to go see it together, but this is a separate time. I went with my cousin and his friends, and someone just brought like an infant into the theater. And like this infant was like crying obviously throughout the movie. It's a Christopher Nolan movie. So, you have these grand like scores and whatnot. And then I told the lady, I was like, can you put your baby on vibrate, please? Cause like, this is not the place for a movie theater for like an infant. And she looked at me like, like she was already right in front of us. I was like, excuse me, miss, can you put your baby on vibrate? Like this is not the place for that. And she just looked at me and then she didn't say anything. And then like maybe 10 minutes later, her baby kept crying and she eventually left. I'm like, why would you, like, I understand you want to get out for a bit, but like, don't bring an infant. This is probably like the last place you want to bring a kid or an infant to. Like, if you can't find a sitter, I get it, but don't bring them to a movie theater to like ruin everyone else's experience. Regardless, I already saw the movie, but it's like, it's just very annoying.
Maybe they were taking their kids as a cautionary tale for stranger danger.
Maybe.
Don't talk to magicians.
Don't talk to, yeah, with black balloons and like, and of course it goes back to the van situation where like, oh, like don't go to the creepy dude like in the white van or whatever. In this case, it's a black van.
It was like an epidemic in the 70s and 80s. Like it happened so much back then.
Yeah, because I mean, they didn't really have the technology we have today and like all this other crazy stuff. But yeah, I mean, getting into like spoilers, we see the past, was it like 4 or 5 victims that have been killed by the grabber. And of course, one of those victims being Finney's friends who...
yeah, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was actually very heartbreaking. I believe his name, and it's not... Robin. Okay, it's not showing here on IMDb, and I was looking through.
Yeah, this movie had a surprising amount of like emotional like beats to it. Like you expect the horror elements, but it's also got a good emotional backbone too.
So yeah, especially the relationship between Robin and Finney, not Vinny. So I swear to God, I thought that man's name was Vinny. It wouldn't make more sense, but I guess Finney is whatever. But the relationship between Robin and Finney was pretty nice. And then of course we get this scene between Madeleine McGraw playing Gwen and the father, who is, I think that's Jeremy Davies. Yeah. We kind of get the whipping with the belt abusive scene. Like, I think she did
it's hard to watch.
I can imagine that being hard to watch for a lot of people. For me, I'm able to just kind of like stomach that kind of stuff. I mean, Django Unchained is like one of my favorite movies of all time. And I mean, well, come on, there's a lot of abuse in that movie, but I think she played the heck out of that scene. I think it was done in a great way to where you didn't like physically, like you kind of physically saw it, but it was like off screen at the same time. Like the way it was edited, I thought was done very nicely. Where, you saw the emotional beats coming from Gwen, and then, Vinny kind of coming in to try to like help his sister because their father, Terrence, played by Jeremy Davies, their mother's not in the picture, killed herself. And I'm assuming that kind of like led to him drinking all day. So it's a classic thing of like, the 60s, 70s where the kids are taking care of the parents instead of the other way around type situation. And of course, Gwen going to stay at her friend's house on Fridays, probably due to that type of situation. So it's always, it's kids looking out for each other type situation. But it was a very powerful scene, and I can definitely imagine a lot of people, being turned away from that. But I mean, it's unfortunately, that's kind of just how it was like back in the 60s, 70s, like honestly, all the way up probably like through the 90s, to be completely honest with you, when it came to the old belt situation. But great scene, but I think it added a lot of context to the story of why these kids are, it's all about the children type situation.
And it's kind of like even after escaping, they kind of have to go home to a kind of similar situation in a way.
Yeah, similar situation, but not being locked in a basement. But yes, definitely and
nobody's watching you sleep.
Yeah, that was a creepy part. Like, what did he want?
There's a few lines that he delivers where it's just like spine tickling, like so creepy.
What was the name of the game that Robin said? Naughty Boy, I think it was, or one of the paper boy. One of the other previous victims had said, "Oh, like it's a trap." Like he left. Ethan, the grabber, leaves the door slightly unlocked when Finney is taken to see if he's gonna try to make his grand escape. But it's like, obviously he knew what he was doing. He's sitting upstairs, like with this shirtless and this mask, and then
such a freak.
That was pretty freaking creepy. Like it really, really was. What did you think of the twist where the grabber owned two homes right across the street from each other, and then one of them was obviously empty where he buried the victims, and then there's one right across the street?
Yeah, I don't know how much that really adds to the story because it's kind of becoming a bit of a cliche where at the end you have the police like kind of breaking into a house to try to find the abductee, and then they're looking around and they find the basement, but then it's the wrong house. It's kind of like becoming a common trope. And I feel like it felt pretty forced in this one. It's just, it's across the street. It doesn't really add too much to it. I don't really understand the addition of the brother into the storyline. It's just kind of, I was trying to figure out what the purpose was. Because he was also in Sinister, so he has that relationship with Scott Derrickson, so I could see why he brought him back. It's just trying to figure out where his character fit, because he's the brother of the grabber, and he doesn't know that he's got kids in the basement, but he's also researching where the grabber is. It doesn't really end up leading to anything, except for when he does find the kid in the basement, and then he gets axed.
Yeah, I was literally about to say, literally just gets axed like across the head. I was like, man, like just when you're starting to like him, like you're not sure if he's gonna let him go, but then he's like, you want to know how I found you? And Finney's like, no, like just get me out of here. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to, before the grabber comes home, like get me out of here. And then of course, some brother on brother crime here. Some Mufasa and Scar crime here. Just kind of, So that was kind of, I was starting to kind of like him, but I do agree with you. I don't know what his.
It just kind of mucks up the story, because then you start thinking, it's like, okay, so the grabber has these kids here, and then he's hanging out in the kitchen with a mask on for like hours on end. Wouldn't the brother see that at some point and question why you're wearing this mask? Or is it just he just accept the weirdness?
So Max didn't really he had a feeling that his brother was doing something weird in the basement, but it's like at one point you never just thought to go down there by yourself, while he's just out of curiosity. It took this long to be he's killed 3-4 kids already, and the kids are essentially kind of trying to help Vinny escape. And the phone type situation, where I really like how Robin was teaching Vinny how to essentially stand up for himself by putting dirt inside, unscrewing the old phone and putting dirt inside of it. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and then he sets up a Home Alone type trap for him too. And then that's when the crowd starts getting excited when that happens.
Yeah, as soon as he started digging that hole in the middle and he's jumping over, I'm like, that's obviously leading towards something. And I thought he was going to escape through the meat locker, but I guess not. But it was a really good movie overall. I don't know. There's something was missing from it. I guess it could have been not necessarily maybe trim the fat, but I feel like some scenes could have been replaced with something else. It's funny as it was seeing Max, being hopped up on cocaine and stuff. He's it's all connected. He's like, oh, the grabber lives in this area. And then one day he's just sitting there and he's like, oh my God.
I was just trying to figure out what that adds to the story, and I couldn't really.
I agree.
Come up with anything.
I definitely agree, for sure. Well, overall, I thought it was a very entertaining movie. I mean, this is produced by Paramount Pictures, so I'm assuming at some point this will come to Paramount Plus as well.
I also wanted to mention I really like the Blumhouse. They have a new production intro with Mikey Myers at the beginning.
See, I didn't notice that at first, and I didn't even know this was a Blumhouse production movie until it started. But of course, with horror movies, you kind of get all the other horror trailers and stuff. The one for Smile, the one you sent me earlier, was pretty. I was like,
yeah, it's getting some hype online.
Yeah,
it's a very dumb concept, but it was a good trailer.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see for that one. But I guess before we get into final thoughts here, what would you, out of the horror movies you've seen this year, where does this kind of stand for you? Does this stand more at the top, more at the bottom, or in the middle?
Well, I guess I've seen 3 this year. So X Scream in this.
Okay, because you never saw Men, did you?
No, I did not. I mean, out of those three, it would probably be 3, but it's not like very far off.
Right.
They're all kind of similarly placed.
Yeah, I think out of the 4 I've seen, this one definitely is not at the bottom. I think Men is like at the bottom. As much as I enjoyed Jesse Buckley's performance, I thought it was pretty good there. But I would have to say, Scream was good, but I think X was like just a top notch, just a little bit better than Scream. Just because of, the feel of it and just I really like the underlying theme of it as well. So definitely X will be number 1, and then Scream, and then The Black Phone, and then Men, for sure. But I really did like this movie. This is a movie I would go back and watch, like if, I wanted to like show somebody. I'm hoping it comes to Paramount Plus because, we've seen like Sonic come to Paramount Plus, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Scream as well. Scream 5, yeah, definitely, and a few others, including like A Quiet Place and stuff. So hopefully this comes on Paramount Plus at some point. But Devin, let's get into our ratings here really quick. In our final thoughts, what would you give The Black Phone?
Yeah, overall, definitely very entertaining. Like I mentioned before, whenever you get abductions and children into a story, it definitely elevates and heightens the tone of the scares because it's kids and you want to protect the kids. It was so creepy when he was watching them sleep and he's like, why are you doing that? And then he's like, I just wanted to like get a look at you.
He's like, hey.
Oh my God.
It's like
it's like Bradley Cooper, but very creepy.
He's like, hey, yeah, I just want to take another look at you. Yeah, definitely. So what would you give your rating?
But yeah, I mentioned a couple of the issues I had with some of the storylines, just not really adding too much, and then just wanting more of the Grabber. Also, come up with a better name than the Grabber. We could have done better. Maybe like, I don't know, like the Shadow, the Ghost. I don't know. I'm just thinking of like
the Snatcher,
the white mask, but they wouldn't know he has a white mask though. So
that is true. Well,
wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, he was like a magician, so he kind of had like the white mask. I guess that was his day job, which is actually kind of creepy. But yeah. I give it a solid 81. Definitely has some issues, but very entertaining, and you can definitely see the vision. And Ethan Hawke is just amazing. Definitely. For my score really quick, I just give it a solid 80 myself. I thought it was a good movie. I really, really did. Like I said, it wasn't like blown away. Actually, I probably might tip this down to about, I get like 78, like a cool 78. This just a few notches down, just because I really wish we would have saw more of Ethan Hawke. But overall, I really did enjoy it. Like I thought it was very good. So 78 for me. The performances all around were great. And like I said, with Gwen, played by Madeleine McGraw, she was definitely my favorite character, next to Robin. Actually, Robin was not taking crap from no one. 100%. Yeah. So he was, I was like, man, this kid's gonna grow up to be some kind of something. I don't know, an MMA fighter or something. I'm not entirely sure where you would channel that energy into. But that concludes our review of The Black Phone. Again, this is playing only in theaters. Definitely go check it out. If you're a big horror fan or just a big Ethan Hawke fan in general.
If you're not a child
or an infant.
Do not bring your infants to 10 p.m. showings of child abduction horror movies.
That is such that's just such an arbitrary time to not to see a movie. But it's such an arbitrary time to take your kids to see a movie. So I don't know what they were thinking.
It just made no sense.
People these days, man, they are crazy. So, as I said before, that concludes everything about our Black Phone review here on the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, if you like what you heard here today, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice, and make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, your lover, whoever it may be. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. And really quick, coming up next on the show, we had a very busy week this past week. I'm not sure if anyone out there has noticed, but we released 4 episodes. I didn't realize it until like I dropped Miss Marvel. It's like, oh my God, we have like 1 more to go. So what came out on our channel previously, or our podcast, we had our Lightyear review that is up on our podcast platforms. We also had our Umbrella Academy Season 3 spoiler-free review and our review of Miss Marvel Episode 3. And we covered Obi-Wan Kenobi parts 4 through 6 to round out the ending of that series. So definitely, if you're interested in any of that content or anything else that we have on the channel, podcast on the podcast. Oh my gosh, I'm all over the place today. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, definitely go check out our episodes on podcast platforms around the internet. And we hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys later on. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you all for listening. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And follow us on Instagram, Twitter to stay in the know. That was Devin. My name is Christian. We'll see you guys in the next one.